The sound of the mini wind turbine model softly echoed in my office in Eugene, Oregon, a small town where green hills blend with the vibrant rhythm of tech startups. I, Amelia, 40 years old, sat in front of a desk made of recycled wood, surrounded by screens displaying data from Greenwave's renewable energy projects, the company I founded 8 years ago. The glass walls were adorned with sample solar panels next to a display board filled with shining green tech awards. This was where I turned the idea of sustainable energy into reality, providing solutions to hundreds of cities across the U.S., from small towns like Eugene to major cities like Seattle. The office was full of energy. My team laughed while working around miniature turbines, and the scent of green tea from the corner spread like a reminder that everything was on the right track. That day was a Friday afternoon in March 2025, and I was reviewing the expansion plan to take Greenwave to international markets, feeling lighthearted after signing a deal with a major city in California, a milestone that would put Greenwave on the global map. I pictured the moment of sharing this good news with the team, their proud eyes realizing we had achieved something many big competitors only dreamed of. The phone on my desk lit up a message from my mother, Margaret. I smiled, thinking it was an invitation to the weekend's family gathering, an event she had reminded us about since last month to celebrate my sister Sophie, who had just been named Young Entrepreneur of the Year. By a tech magazine, I had prepared a small gift for Sophie, a personalized notebook, as I had always supported her, even though our family had never done the same for me. But when I opened the message, it felt like the air was sucked out of the room, each word hitting my self-worth like a hammer. Amelia, we've talked to Sophie. You don't need to come to the family gathering. You're always a failure, always obsessed with those meaningless projects, while Sophie has brought the family name to a new level. She just bought us a house in Portland, and you, a job nobody cares about. Don't ruin our happy day. I sat there, my hands trembling, my vision blurred, not from tears, but from a quiet rage. My parents, Henry and Margaret, had always chosen Sophie, called her the pride, while I, even after building Greenwave into a multi-million-dollar company, was still seen as the failure. The image of family gatherings where my mother boasted about Sophie's achievements, and my father nodded in agreement while I was only asked, "Is work going okay?" now felt like a cruel joke. I took a deep breath, put the phone down, and looked through the glass at my team. They were discussing excitedly, unaware that my world had just shattered. Inside, I heard my grandmother's voice, who once said, "Amelia, you are a treasure, even if someone doesn't see it." I whispered to myself, "They're wrong, completely wrong, and I will show them, not with words, not with tears, but with a quiet plan powerful enough to silence them." I didn't reply to the message. Instead, I opened my laptop and checked the secret investment fund I had built, a large sum from Greenwave's profits that no one in my family knew about. I thought of the plan that would change everything, not just to prove them wrong, but to remind myself that I didn't need their validation to shine. I stood up, walked into the meeting room, and called the team together. "We're accelerating the international expansion," I said, my voice calm but firm. They looked at me, sensing the shift, but no one asked questions. I returned to my desk and wrote a note. The day they called me a failure, I chose to build an empire. Have you ever been called a failure by your family, just because they didn't see your light? I've been there, but what I did afterward was what truly left them speechless. My mother's message felt like a cold wind sweeping through the memories I had tried to bury deep. I sat in the office looking out the window at the rolling Eugene hills and let my mind drift back to the past, where the cracks in my family first began to form. Growing up in this town, I was always the lesser child. In my parents' eyes, Sophie, my younger sister by 5 years, was the shining star, smart, beautiful, and later became the CEO of a fashion tech startup called by Forbes the future of retail. Every one of her achievements, from school awards to magazine features, was hung all over the living room like shimmering medals. And me, the times I won scholarships, the science projects I won awards for, or when I founded Greenwave, only received a nod or the comment, "That's good, but don't get cocky." I remember my mother once said bluntly when I was 25, freshly graduated with an energy engineering degree, "Amelia, you need to be realistic. You don't have the qualities. Sophie has no charm to make big things happen, so just find a stable job. Don't chase dreams beyond your ability." That sentence, though, 15 years old, still cuts as sharp as the first day, like a wound that never heals. I saw the favoritism early on, but I didn't want to believe it was rejection. I worked harder, as if each success would make them see me differently. When I was 30 and launched Greenwave, I invited my parents to the office, hoping they would be proud. My father just chuckled. "Green energy, Sophie just signed a deal with a major brand in New York. That's what changes the world." I nodded, smiled, but inside the pain felt like an emotional debt that would never be paid. The clearest sign came 2 years ago when I overheard my mother on the phone with a friend, Amelia. "She's okay, but she always needs us to worry. Thank goodness Sophie takes care of the whole family." Worry. I had never asked them for a dime, paid off all my college debt on my own, and built Greenwave from scratch, starting in a rented room with an old laptop. But I didn't argue. Instead, I began acting quietly the way I designed sustainable energy systems. 3 years ago, I opened a secret investment fund, transferring profits from Greenwave into it without letting my parents or Sophie know. I recorded every time I was belittled, every hurtful word in a small notebook. Not for revenge, but to remind myself I deserved better. When my mother asked me to contribute to the home renovation fund, I agreed, but only a small amount, just enough to avoid suspicion. Inside, I had already planned something bigger. A plan not just to protect myself, but to go far beyond the recognition they refused to give. I remember one night, sitting alone in the office, looking at a photo of my grandmother on the desk. She once said, "Amelia, you don't need anyone to shine, just need to believe in yourself." Her words were like a fire that kept me going, even when each family gathering meant hearing my mother praise Sophie and my father nod along as if I didn't exist. That message from my mother calling me a failure wasn't just the last straw. It was a fire that burned away any illusion of family love left. I opened my laptop, checked the fund, and saw a number larger than I had imagined. I thought of my grandmother, of the time she told stories of overcoming hardship. With a smile, I wrote a note. The day they rejected me, I chose to build my own future. Have you ever felt your family turn their back on you just because you didn't fit their ideal? I stood at that crossroads too. But what I did next was what made everyone turn and look. My mom's message hit like a storm. But I didn't let it drown me. I sat in the office watching the Greenwave team work and felt a new strength, like how an energy system regains its flow after being disrupted. But then the crisis hit faster than I expected. The next Monday, I received an email from a major partner in Seattle, canceling the contract with the reason we heard Greenwave lacks strategic vision. I was stunned, checked the documents, and saw all the figures were still solid. Why would they think that I immediately called Rachel, Greenwave's financial expert and colleague, who always brings bold ideas? "Rachel, I need to see you right away," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "My mom just called me a failure, told me not to attend the family meeting because Sophie is their only pride. I think Sophie is spreading rumors about Greenwave because a partner just canceled with a strange reason. I don't want to retaliate with words. I want them to see they were wrong, and I need your help to turn this pain into power." Rachel arrived at the office within an hour, bringing a cup of green tea and a look of determination. She sat down, listened as I told her about my mom's message about Sophie, about all the years I was belittled. When I finished, she was silent for a moment, then replied, her voice low but sharp. Amelia, I've seen you turn tiny ideas into a company that changes the world. Seen you work until 3 a.m., perfecting the turbine system. Seen you inspire the entire team. Your parents and Sophie think they can define you, but they don't know who you are. We're going to take Greenwave to the next level, and I have an idea. Invest in Sophie's company, but not to help her. We'll buy shares, gain control, and make it part of Greenwave, so they see that this failure has gone far beyond them. Our you and Rachel's idea was like a beam of light cutting through the fog, but the crisis wasn't over. The next day, another investor pulled out citing a reliable source, saying Greenwave is at risk. I sat in my office watching the company's balance drop, feeling like everything was collapsing. I thought of Grandma, of what she used to say. Amelia, hardship is a chance for you to shine. I couldn't let her down. I stood up, walked through the office, and saw Rachel in a meeting with the finance team. She looked at me and smiled. Amelia, I just contacted a group of new investors in Portland. They want to meet with you next week. This is our chance to turn the tide. But I need you to believe in yourself like you did when you started Greenwave. I nodded, feeling the fire in me reignite. But deep down, I was still struggling. I thought about the nights I sat alone, wondering if I was truly good enough, if Greenwave could compete with the tech giants. I remembered one evening sitting with Grandma when she said, Amelia, you don't need anyone to shine, you just need to believe in yourself. Those words became my anchor. I opened my laptop, checked the progress of the new project, an AI-integrated turbine system, and felt hope rising. I wrote an email to the team. We're facing a challenge, but this is our chance to prove Greenwave is unstoppable. Rachel arrived carrying a folder. Amelia, this is the investment plan for Sophie's company. I'll make sure it's secret and flawless. I smiled, though my heart was still heavy. Do you ever think that those who try to push you down end up giving you the drive to rise higher? I thought so, but the secret I uncovered after that stunned me even more. The crisis from partners and investors drove me into work like a way to forget the pain. The Greenwave office became a shelter, a place I could control, unlike the family that was turning their back on me. But each contract cancellation email, each rumor about Greenwave's lack of vision, made me feel like I was fighting an invisible enemy. I knew Sophie was behind it, but I needed proof. I called Rachel. Rachel, I need someone who can dig deep into this. If Sophie is trying to sabotage Greenwave, I want to know exactly what she's done, and I want them to face the truth, not through confrontation, but through a plan they can't deny. Rachel nodded her eyes, gleaming. Amelia, I know someone. Leo, a financial expert. He can track down any digital trace. If Sophie is playing dirty, he'll find out. Leo arrived the next day, bringing an old laptop and a sharp gaze. If she's doing something, there'll be a trace, he said, his voice low but full of confidence. For 5 days, Leo worked non-stop, and when he brought the report, I almost dropped my green tea. Sophie wasn't just spreading rumors. She had contacted Greenwave's partners, pretending to be concerned about the uncertain future of green tech, causing them to doubt me. One email to the Seattle partner read, Greenwave is struggling, and I hear they have no long-term plan. I was stunned, realizing Sophie had used the title industry insider to undermine me. But the more shocking part was that my parents knew about it. Leo retrieved an email between my mom and Sophie from an old account. My mom wrote Sophie, "You're right to protect the family's reputation. Amelia needs to know her place. If her work fails, maybe she'll be more humble, and we won't have to be ashamed of her meaningless projects," Sophie replied. "Don't worry, Mom. I'll make sure Amelia doesn't overshadow my big day." I read that feeling like the blood in my body froze. My inner voice roared. They think I'm weak, not worthy of standing beside Sophie, but they don't know what I've built. Don't know the nights. I stayed up perfecting the energy system. don't know how prepared I am. They want me to fall. I'll rise and I'll make them face the truth. Not with resentment, but with a plan greater than the recognition they refuse to give me. I called Rachel, my voice firm. Rachel, I want to invest in Sophie's company, but not to help her. I want control to make it part of Greenwave, and do it before the family meeting so they'll see that this failure has gone beyond them. Can you make this plan secret and perfect? Rachel laughed over the phone. Amelia, they won't see it coming until you're ready. I opened my laptop, checked the secret investment fund, and saw there was enough money to carry out the plan. I thought of Grandma, of the times she told stories of overcoming hardship with a smile. I wrote a note. The day I found out the truth, I decided not just to survive, but to dominate. But deep inside, I was still afraid. I wondered if I was strong enough to compete, if Greenwave could weather this storm. I remembered one evening sitting with Grandma when she said, Amelia, your biggest enemy is self-doubt. That line became my anchor. I stood up, walked through the office, and saw the team looking at me with trust in their eyes. Have you ever uncovered a secret that made you want to change the entire world? I stood at that threshold, and the moment of reckoning was closer than I thought. The family meeting took place in a luxurious villa on the outskirts of Eugene, with sparkling chandeliers and the gentle sound of piano music drifting from the corner of the room. I walked in wearing a deep blue dress, holding a small USB drive that contained the documents I had prepared for weeks. Sophie was there beaming beside our parents, as if she were the center of the universe. My parents, Henry and Margaret, sat at the main table, their eyes gliding past me as if I were an uninvited guest. I didn't tremble, even though my heart was pounding. I had waited for this moment not to seek revenge, but to expose the truth, to show them that I was not the failure they had defined. When Mom invited everyone to speak and congratulate Sophie, I stood up, my gaze sweeping across the crowd, and began. Today we gather to celebrate Sophie, but I stand here to tell a story about someone called a failure, told she wasn't good enough, not worthy to stand beside the pride of this family. I plugged the USB into the projector, and the screen lit up with Mom's message. You've always been a failure. Sophie has taken our family name to new heights. Murmurs rose among the guests, from uncles and aunts to family friends. I continued, my voice so sharp but calm. My parents thought I only had meaningless projects. Sophie spread rumors to sabotage Greenwave, the company I built from scratch. They thought I would collapse, that I could never compare to Sophie, the one hailed as the star. But here's the truth. I am Amelia Harper, founder of Greenwave, a multi-million-dollar green tech company providing sustainable energy to hundreds of cities. And today I announced that I've invested in Sophie's company, owning 51% of its shares, making it a part of Greenwave, not because I need recognition, but because I want them to see that they were wrong, completely wrong, to call me a failure. I projected the investment contract on the screen with my signature and the legal seal. Mom burst into tears, not out of pride, but out of shock. Dad bowed his head, his hand tightening around his wine glass. Sophie's face turned pale. Her mouth open, but no words came out. The crowd fell silent, then applauded, not for the contract, but because the truth had been revealed, because someone once dismissed had stood up with full strength. I looked straight into Sophie's eyes. Sophie, you can continue working with me or walk away. But from now on, Greenwave will lead, and I'm at the helm. I stepped down, feeling as if I had shed a heavy burden. Rachel, standing in the corner of the room, gave me a thumbs up, her eyes sparkling. But that moment wasn't just about victory. I thought about the days I doubted myself, the nights I wondered if I was good enough. I remembered the first time I pitched Greenwave, when an investor sneered, "Green energy isn't a place for a 30-year-old woman." I proved him wrong, and now I proved my family wrong. I called Grandma right after the meeting, even though she had passed away years ago. Grandma. I did it. I knew she was smiling somewhere. That night, I returned to the office and saw my team waiting with a cake that read, "Congratulations, Amelia, our leader." I smiled for the first time in weeks, feeling truly free. I thought of Grandma, of how she always found joy in hardship. I wrote a note. The day I stood up to my family, I found myself. But this victory wasn't the end. I knew more challenges lay ahead, more people would doubt me. I opened my laptop and saw an email from a new client wanting to partner with Greenwave. "Do you think justice can come in the form of a silent plan?" I did it, but my journey didn't end at that villa. Leaving the villa, I drove to the park near home where I used to play as a child with Grandma, sitting on a wooden bench. I let the tears fall, not out of anger, but from the sadness of realizing my family had never truly seen me. I thought of the afternoons Grandma held my hand pointing to the green hills and saying, "Amelia, you're a treasure, even if someone doesn't see it." Her words were a fire that warmed me, but the pain still lingered like a scar that never fades. I had won at the family meeting, but inside, I wondered if that victory truly filled the void, left by favoritism. I picked up the phone, wanting to call Sophie to ask why she had done what she did. But then I stopped. I realized the answer wasn't in her or in our parents. It was in me. That night, I wrote a letter to myself, promising never to let anyone define my worth. "Amelia," I wrote, "you don't need recognition to shine. You built Greenwave, changed the world, and that is enough." That act, simple yet powerful, became a turning point that helped me heal. I thought of the times I stood in front of the mirror questioning if I deserved Greenwave's success. I remembered one evening sitting with Grandma when she said, "Amelia, you don't need anyone to shine. Just believe in yourself." Her words were like a wind that cleared the fog. The next day, the Greenwave office was busier than ever. Clients dropped by not just to sign contracts, but to say they were proud of me, that my story inspired them. But there were still moments I stood alone looking at Grandma's photo on my desk, wondering if I had disappointed her by letting the family fall apart. Doubt crept in, but I opened her old notebook and saw her handwriting. "Your strength lies in kindness, not in recognition." I wiped my tears, feeling a sense of relief. I called Rachel. "Rachel, I want to hold a team meeting, not to celebrate, but to thank them for standing by me through this storm." Rachel laughed. "Amelia, the team loves you, and I think they'll be happy to see you smile again." The meeting was warm, with cake and green tea. I stood before the team and said, "You are not just colleagues, you are family. When I thought I would fall, you helped me rise." They applauded, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel alone. I thought of the days I doubted myself, the nights I wondered if Greenwave was worth the sacrifice. But now, looking at the team, I knew I had made the right choice. I wrote another note. The day I healed, I found a new family. I started making time for myself, walking in the park, listening to birdsong, and journaling. Each page was a step forward, a way for me to understand that my value didn't lie in my parents or Sophie, but in myself. I thought of Grandma, how she always smiled despite life's hardships. I wanted to live like her, not for victory, but for joy. I called the team and shared. We'll keep going, not just for Greenwave, but because each of us deserves to shine. Have you ever found light in your darkest days? I did. And it led me to a place I never expected. Sophie didn't accept failure. 1 month after the family meeting, she sent an email demanding that I withdraw my investment, threatening to sue if I didn't return control of her company. I smiled when I read it, not out of satisfaction, but because I was prepared. I called Nora, Greenwave's attorney, the one who had helped finalize the investment contract. "Nora, Sophie wants to sue," I said, my voice calm. "I need you to make sure we not only win, but also make her understand that she can't rewrite the truth." Nora laughed over the phone. Amelia, your contract is as tight as a turbine system. Sophie doesn't stand a chance. The trial was held at a local court in Eugene, in a small but solemn courtroom. I walked in dressed in a black suit, eyes proud, though there was still a slight worry inside me. Sophie sat on the other side, eyes avoiding mine next to her attorney, a man with a fake air of confidence. I thought about the days I used to see Sophie as a little sister, used to help her with homework, used to feel proud when she succeeded. Now she was the one trying to pull me down. Nora stood up and presented the evidence with the precision of an engineer. A legal investment contract. Sophie's email spreading rumors and texts from our mother encouraging her to teach me a lesson. Nora said, Your Honor, my client, Mrs. Amelia Harper, has been intentionally sabotaged by her younger sister, Mrs. Sophie Harper, through the spreading of false rumors, resulting in hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages to Greenwave, Mrs. Amelia's investment contract into Mrs. Sophie's company, is legal, transparent, and was signed by Mrs. Sophie herself. Mrs. Sophie's request to withdraw the investment has no legal basis. Sophie's attorney countered, Your Honor, this is a family dispute, not a legal issue. Mrs. Sophie didn't know the contract would lead to a loss of control, and Mrs. Amelia took advantage of her sister's trust. Nora smiled, eyes sharp. Trust, Mrs. Sophie signed the contract after 3 months of negotiation with advice from her own lawyer. She was fully aware of the terms, and she spread rumors to damage Greenwave. As this email proves, Nora projected Sophie's email onto the screen. The judge looked at Sophie. Mrs. Harper, do you deny signing the contract or spreading the rumors? Sophie stammered, I just wanted to protect my reputation. The judge cut in. By sabotaging your sister. The court denies your request. Mrs. Amelia's contract remains intact, and Mrs. Sophie must pay $50,000 in damages for reputation loss. I left the courtroom, eyes proud, not looking back at Sophie. Nora walked beside me, saying, Amelia, you didn't just win. You showed Sophie that you're not someone to mess with. I nodded, but inside I thought of Grandma. I wrote a note. The day I reclaimed justice, I reclaimed myself. I returned to the office, saw the team waiting with a cake that read, Congratulations, Amelia, the undefeated queen. I smiled, feeling as if a burden had just been lifted. But this victory wasn't just mine. I thought of the team of Rachel of the nights they stayed late at the office to support me. I thought of the clients who believed in Greenwave, even when the rumors spread. I stood in front of the mirror, looked into my own eyes, and saw a woman who no longer doubted herself. I opened my laptop and saw an email from a new city, wanting to sign a long-term contract with Greenwave. I called Rachel, we've won, but I want Greenwave to be bigger, so no one can deny us. Rachel laughed, Amelia, you're ready to take over the world. Do you think justice can be healing? I felt it, but my story continues. And what I did next truly made my family look back. In the weeks after the trial, Eugene seemed to shrink as news of my victory spread. Sophie tried to spread rumors that I had manipulated the contract to steal her company. But Rachel's article in a tech magazine titled Amelia and Greenwave, From Bias to Breakthrough, crushed all the lies. The article told my journey from being called a failure to taking control of Sophie's company and the truth about my family's actions. Clients poured in from small towns to international energy corporations. I received an invitation to speak at a green tech conference, and Greenwave became an unmissable name in the renewable energy industry. Meanwhile, Sophie had to face the consequences. Her company, now a part of Greenwave, lost its reputation. As customers learned, she had spread the rumors. Sophie moved into a small apartment in Portland, working under my management, her eyes no longer proud. My parents lived in the house Sophie bought, but their reputation in the community declined as my story spread. I heard Mom cried at a friend's gathering, saying she regretted underestimating me. I didn't feel satisfied. I only felt sad because the people I once loved had pushed themselves into the shadows. I focused on Greenwave, expanding the company with new branches in Seattle and Boston. I hired 20 more employees, from engineers to environmental experts, and felt proud seeing the team grow. One afternoon, a client, Linda, came to the office to sign a contract for her city. She said, "Amelia, I read your story, and it made me dare to stand up after my family called me useless. You are my inspiration." I smiled, feeling the ripple effect. I thought of the days I doubted myself, the nights I wondered if I was good enough. Now I wasn't just a businesswoman, but a symbol not just for women, but for anyone who had ever been dismissed. I started taking time for myself, walking in the park, listening to birdsong, and writing in my journal. One time I wrote, "I used to think my worth lay in my parents' eyes, but I learned it lies in what I do." I called Rachel to thank her. "Rachel, without you, I don't know if I could have come this far. You're not just a colleague. You changed my life." Rachel laughed. "Amelia, you changed your own life. I was just your cheerleader." I opened my laptop and saw an email from the Green Tech conference confirming my speech. I began to prepare not just to tell my story, but to inspire hundreds of people. I thought of Grandma, how she always found joy in hardship. I stood in front of the mirror, looked into my own eyes, and saw a woman who no longer doubted herself. I wrote a note. The day I saw my impact, I knew I had won. Have you ever thought a wound could become a source of inspiration? I turned it into reality, and I want more people to feel that too. Winning in court and at the family meeting was not the end, but the beginning of a bigger mission. I realized that my story wasn't just mine, but it belonged to millions of people who had been looked down on by their families, who had been told they weren't good enough. I founded Green Future, a nonprofit organization that supports women in starting businesses in the green technology sector. The Greenwave office became the hub with small classrooms where women from 20 to 60 gathered to learn how to design turbines, analyze finances, or plan a business. The atmosphere was always lively, filled with laughter, keyboard typing, and the scent of green tea. One evening I hosted the first workshop, standing in front of 50 women with eager eyes. I shared, "I used to think my worth was in my parents' eyes, in my sister's recognition. But I've learned that it lies in what I do, the dreams I chase. You can do it too." A member, Clara, stood up, her voice trembling. "Amelia, I started my own company after my family rejected me because you gave me faith." The crowd applauded, and I felt tears welling up, not from sadness, but from joy. I organized a charity event, raising $150,000 for local schools with hundreds of people participating. Eugene was filled with my story, from local newspapers to social media. But things weren't always smooth. One time a member criticized me for being too busy to lead Green Future, saying I wasn't committed enough. I listened and invited an environmental expert to assist strengthening the organization. Clara came and hugged me. "Amelia, you didn't just teach us technology. You taught us how to face criticism." I thought of my grandmother, of how she always helped others. I began spending weekends teaching children in struggling areas for free, helping them learn how to design turbines. One boy, Tommy, said, "Ms. Amelia, I want to build energy systems like you when I grow up." That sentence felt like a gift, reminding me that I wasn't just building Greenwave. I was building the future. I called Rachel. "Rachel, I want Green Future to expand nationwide. Do you think we can do it?" Rachel laughed. "Amelia, with you, nothing is impossible." I wrote a note. The day I spread the light, I saw the world shine brighter. I thought of the days I stood alone, wondering if I was worth fighting for. Now I see myself in the eyes of Clara, of Tommy, of the hundreds of women learning to change their lives. I opened my laptop and saw an email from an international organization wanting to collaborate with Green Future. I smiled, knowing this was just the beginning. Do you think a community can heal the deepest wounds? I've seen it, and it changed me forever. 2 years after my mother's cruel message, I stood on the stage of a green tech conference in Portland in front of hundreds of women with hopeful eyes. I wore a red dress, the color of the fire my grandmother once said I carried inside me. I shared. My family called me a failure thought. I wasn't good enough, not worthy enough. But I turned that pain into GreenWave, a green tech empire providing sustainable energy to millions, not for them, but because I know my worth, because I want to live true to my dream. During the Q&A session, a young audience member asked, "How can I believe in myself when my family says I'm useless, when they choose someone else over me?" I replied, "Start with a small step. A dream, you won't give up a skill. You learn to prove you are good enough. Your worth doesn't need validation from anyone. Only your own belief. Every small step will take you to places you never imagined." The conference ended with applause, but the moment I'll never forget was when Clara from Green Future ran up and hugged me. "Amelia, thanks to you, I'm living my dream with my own company and a new family." GreenWave now has 4 branches, a team of 60, and was mentioned by Forbes as the Energy Innovation Company of the Year. Sophie works under my management, learning humility. Her eyes no longer arrogant. My parents live off a fund I support, but we rarely talk, and I no longer wait for an apology. I keep my mother's message in a small frame next to the line, "Your worth is a flame no one can extinguish." At the 10th anniversary of GreenWave, I stood before clients, my team, and the community saying, "I used to think my family defined me, but I define myself, and each of us has the right to paint our own life's picture." I thought of my grandmother, of how she lived with joy even when life was hard. I thought of Clara, of Tommy, of the hundreds of women transforming their lives. Through Green Future Life, like an energy system, requires persistent strategy and belief. There are days you feel invisible, but remember, you are the one drawing the future. Live positively, love yourself, and turn every pain into power. What will you do to prove your worth, even when no one believes in you? I did it, and I know you can too.